Hi everyone! Thank you so much for joining me for today's Craft With Me video. Welcome to all of my new subscribers. I've had quite a lot of new subscribers, which I am extremely grateful for. I'm so happy you liked my videos and you decided to stay. And also a very warm welcome to all of my subscribers that have been with me for a while, and I appreciate you guys very much. So today I actually had a different idea for today's video, but then I was scrolling through all of your lovely comments under my ticket videos, and many of you guys were interested in my ephemera book that I have here. This is an ephemera holder that I made for myself, and so I thought, because I'm definitely going to be needing at least one more of these books, I thought, why don't we make one together? I will show you step by step how to make a book like this. And just in case you haven't seen it before or you have no idea what I'm talking about, this is a journal-like ephemera holder that I made for my ephemera, for things that I cut, like buy on Etsy and then cut, or just I have. And this is a hardcover book, fabric covered. I have some metal corners, I have this book plate here, but basically it's constructed the way I would construct a hardcover fabric covered journal. So a great thing about today's video, I think, is that you will also be able to use this video as a guide for you to create your own hardcover fabric covered journal. But what's different about this book from a regular journal is that it has much less pages. All of them are thick cardstock, and they have these pockets, clear pockets, where I store my ephemera pieces, like you can see here. And this has been so great in organizing my ephemera. As you can see, I have quite a lot, and I haven't even printed and cut everything yet, so that's why I'm saying I'm going to be needing one more book, definitely. I have some empty pockets here still, so you can see how it looks, sort of. I used acetate to create these. So this is what I would like us to create today. As you can see, I have different size pockets. I have two smaller pockets here and a sort of wider one here for taller ephemera pieces. This is kind of random. I didn't plan these pockets. I didn't know what I'm going to need. But yeah, but there's a whole variety of pockets here, so I can put various sizes of ephemera. And so yeah, so this is how it basically looks like. It's been great because ever since I put my ephemera in this book, I actually started using it more because I have all of it in one place. So it's easier for me to reach for this one book and use the items than just look for them God knows where, really. So yeah, so this is what we are going to be making, although we are going to be making a slightly different book, and here is why. So let me tell you something that I've learned from creating this book. This is a very big book. I have measurements here. So this is 26 centimeters or 10¼ inches tall, and 16½ centimeters or 6½ inches wide, with a huge spine, which is 7½ centimeters or 3 inches wide. And although it is good to have a book that big because it can like take a lot of my ephemera, it's so heavy. It's already so heavy, and you saw how I have those empty pockets still not filled, and with each like piece that I put in here, it's getting heavier and heavier, and maybe it may be to the point that it's not very comfortable to use. So today we are going to be making a book that is slightly smaller than this, although I will put those measurements, and basically every measurement that we mentioned today in the description box, so you don't have to like browse through the video to find them. If you need to in the future, you will have all the specifics in the description box. So you are very welcome to make this book, your book, this size. But we are going to be making a smaller one. And one more thing that I want to mention is the binding. And the binding is something that we are going to be changing as well, because what I have here is this sort of flexible binding that I learned from Johanna Cloth, and I will link her video below as well in case you wanted to make like this. And this is great because my signatures are not actually sewn into the book. Like you can see here, I have this string, but I can pull out the pages if I need to, or I can add pages if I need to. So this is a very flexible way of binding your book. And I thought it would be great because I really didn't know what kinds of pockets I wanted, what sizes, how many pages, etc. And so I thought, yeah, with this sort of flexible binding I can add pages and it's going to be great. But I noticed one thing that I want you to know, because I have so much packed in here already. You can see that my pages are heavy. So when my book is on my shelf and it's standing like this, the heavy pages kind of weigh down, and you can see hopefully that the string has already started tearing into the pages, just because they are so heavy and they are so, you know, they are weighing down a lot on this string. So it's a great binding for a journal, for regular pages, but I think that we need something more secure for our heavy pages when we are going to be putting much more onto this. So this is the second thing that we are going to be changing. So I will actually be binding the new book with just a 3-hole pamphlet stitch, which I think will be much more secure in this idea. And the last thing I want to mention is these pockets. I made them with acetate. So this is the kind of a thin plastic sheets that you get very often with your packaging, and I also have some of them in just A4 sheets because I use a lot of acetate. But one thing to mention, because I have my pockets double-sided, I had a little bit of an issue with my sewing machine. So it was too much, I think, for my sewing machine to sew through an acetate, then the heavy cardstock, and then one more acetate piece, and my thread kept breaking, and I was really scared my needle would break as well. So this is too much. Those acetate pockets are absolutely fantastic when you want secure pockets, because they are unbreakable basically, and also they are see-through, so you can see even like here I have small ephemera put into these pockets and I see everything. So they are great for this. And if you're not using a sewing machine, if you're just going to be gluing your pockets on the pages, then it's perfect. But before you start sewing, I would make sure that your sewing machine is going to be okay with, you know, 2 acetate sheets and then a cardstock. I have a very cheap sewing machine, so maybe that's the issue, but then it's really like a thick layer of things here for the needle to go through. So in my new book I'm going to be using vellum, and I think, or tracing paper, and I think it's going to be much more like much better for my sewing machine. And also vellum is, I think, maybe more accessible for us than acetate. So we will see how this will work out. But like I said, acetate is great for those pockets, and especially if you're not planning to sew your pockets like I have. I've sewn basically everything here, then feel free to use it. Yeah, so let me show you now what we will need to make this book. So for the cover I have, and this is like I said, this is also how I would make a regular journal cover. So this is like a bonus. It's two birds with one stone, I think the saying goes. So it's both a tutorial for a fabric hardcover, journal cover, and for this ephemera book. So what I use for my covers is I like them to be sturdy, and I don't like them to sort of disfigure because I'm going to be using wet glue over it. So I'm using 2mm book board. I get it in A4 sheets and I just cut it in half. So my cover is going to be 21 centimeters or 8¼ inches tall, and about 15 centimeters and 5 3/4 inches wide. So I have two pieces exactly like this. Again, this is 2mm book board, and I have a thin card. I think this was like a recycled from a bag of a paper pad or something like this, and this is for my spine. So I always choose a thinner card for my spine, and this one is the same height, obviously, so 21 centimeters or 8¼ inches tall, and it's 3 centimeters and an inch and a quarter, or 1¼ inches wide. So this is what we have for a cover. Then what you will need is any fabric that you might like, and I have here this beautiful vintage looking fabric. I have been wanting to use it for a while, and I'm so happy I get to use it on my own project. It's beautiful, but use any fabric you like. Just a thing here, because we are going to be using wet glue for gluing our fabric to the book board, make sure it's not too thin, so that first of all you won't see the grey board through the fabric, but also so that the glue does not sip so easily, though I will show you how I managed to keep my glue from sipping through the fabric. Okay, now the glue. So this is the glue I'm using. Any wet glue will do. PVA will be perfect. I'm using this. This is from a brand Paper Max, and it says here that it's a bookbinding glue. Not sure actually if it is really, but it works perfectly. It's a white glue that dries clear. And of course, to apply our glue, we're just going to need some paintbrush. I'm using a very cheap one, and as you can see, it's been through a lot. And I like a white brush because then it does not take me so much to sort of cover the whole book plate that we have here. And then I have here, not very attractive, but I have a plastic container with some water. I paint a lot using this, so it's all like painty and gesso-y and all that stuff, but it works well. So a paintbrush and some water. So for the supplies, what else do we need? So we are definitely going to be needing some papers. And I have this sheet of paper that I'm going to be using for my end pages. So like here, these underneath here, this is the end page, so what you have on the inside of the cover. And this is the paper that I chose. So just choose any paper that you like that will match your cover, or basically that you enjoy. And I have 4 cardstock pages that I'm going to be using as my pages. So we will have 4 pages, which will give us 16 sides, which I think is plenty. 16 sides with pockets, plus the pockets on the inside covers as well. It's a lot, and I think it will be perfect. So I chose a heavy duty cardstock. This is from a brand called 13 Arts. Show you this. This is a Polish brand, but they may have they may also distribute abroad, I don't know. But one thing to notice, I chose a sort of neutral colors. So this is a bit busy, but neutral colors, because as you see here, you are going to have a lot of colorful ephemera, and to be able to see everything clearly and just not get, you know, a headache because there's so much going on here, I think a more neutral background is a good idea as well. Okay, so I have 4 sheets of this plus 1 sheet for my end pages. What else? I also have these vellum sheets. So these are, I think, about 80, no, 80, not maybe 80, about 60 GSM vellum paper. So it's semi-transparent, and we're going to be using it for our pockets instead of the acetate, and it's going to be much lighter on our sewing machines. Also, a sewing machine, obviously, for stitching your pockets to the pages, or if you are not using a sewing machine, any glue that dries clearly will do. So for example, tacky glue, you absolutely don't have to have a sewing machine, but that's just my preferred way because I like the look of it. What else? You are going to be needing some thread for the binding. So I'm using linen thread. It's very secure, and it's very yeah, I just like it for binding. I always use it for binding my books. So thread, a needle, some pokey tool, because we are going to be poking holes through it. I will put the whole list of supplies for you in the description, so that you can reference it anytime you want. I want this project to be sort of as fun and as easy to follow as possible. So everything you need will be in the description box, and if you have any questions whatsoever, just ask in the comments. I'll be happy to answer. So what we will do first is we are going to be making our cover. And what I'm using here for my sort of base is my glass mat, and I've put some just regular paper over it so I don't get it gluey, because I just don't want to. Okay, so we have our 2 pieces for the cover and our piece for the spine. They have to be the same height, like I mentioned before. And so with our fabric, we are first going to cut it to size, so we make it easier on ourselves. Where is does it have like a top and bottom, this pattern? No, I think no, it goes both ways. So I think it's going to be much easier for us if we start with actually cutting this big piece of fabric to size. And don't be too, don't cut it too close. Oh, sorry, out of frame. Don't cut it too close to the border of the fabric, because we are going to be needing this excess to fold up like this. So let me just cut it just maybe an inch or a bit less of the border of my cover, and I'm definitely not worrying too much about being even, because we are not going to be seeing these rough edges when we glue our end papers. Okay, like this, and I want to, okay, let me put this aside, and I want to get rid of this frayed edge as well, because we don't need this. All right, oh, maybe a little bit more. I don't want this white peeking through, although definitely not have to be too careful about this. Okay, so let's see if it fits. And yeah, so you can see approximately how much I'm taking. I'm leaving here, and this will be, yeah, about an inch each side. So now I have my water, my paintbrush, and my glue. Oh, and I'm going to get some paper towels as well. So here it is, just to soak the excess of water out of our paintbrush, because we don't want our glue to be too watery, but also we don't want to put too much of it on our fabric. Okay, so let me start gluing. So this is what I do. I have this glue, like I said, it's white, but it's going to dry clean. I put some of it on directly on the piece that's going to be my cover. Then I'm soaking the excess of water from my paintbrush with my just paper towel. And here's what I do. Just basically paint over the whole piece. Don't worry if you're just getting a bit of glue on the fabric or on the other pieces, because it's all going to be glued down eventually. So make sure you put a lot of sort of attention to the sides, because we don't want them to be coming off when we glue this down. Yeah, I think it's okay. So when your brush is slightly wet, not too wet, that's why we soak the excess of the water, but when it's slightly wet, it helps you to distribute the glue easily and more evenly. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm just putting my first cover piece down like this. Now I'm going to take my bone folder, turn it around, and first with my fingers and then with my bone folder, I'm going to make sure this is glued all the way down, that it's not coming off on the edges, on the corners. This is very important because it's going to be sort of harder when we have all the pieces. When your corners start coming off, it's going to be harder to glue them then. Okay, like this. Some of my bone folder. Bone folder is just this, mine is actually plastic, but it's this great tool that helps you to when you're gluing things, to make sure there are no wrinkles, that it's all stuck well. Okay, perfect. So this is our first piece, and we are going to be doing the same with our pieces, our two remaining pieces. So I'm just looking if I can bend it a little bit. Like, I like curved spines, but this is so small, so I'm not sure if this is going to work, but we can try. You see here, I'm just trying to curve it a little bit with my fingers, and because I'm using the glue and just gluing it down, it sort of helps for this piece to stay curved after the glue dries. So adding a little bit of glue on the spine, not too much. You can always add more glue if you need to, but it's not that easy to remove the excess of glue. And if you have too much glue, then this is when the soaking through the fabric starts and appears, and there's no easy way to fix it unless you decide to cover those pieces up with something, which is also great, but I wouldn't like to do it here because these books. Okay, so what I'm doing here, I'm placing my spine and I am eyeballing it, but I'm trying to be as even to this side here as possible, and I'm also leaving I think it's a 1/4 of an inch space between my cover and the spine. Let me see. Yeah, it's a 1/4 of an inch. So I would say about 5 millimeters maybe, and turning it around, doing it the same. So because these books are used a lot, you know, I always have them near to my desk and I'm always pulling stuff out of them, and so I don't want them to be too decorated, so I'm not going to be collaging over the cover. I chose a beautiful fabric and I don't actually want to cover it at all. So yeah, so I'm going to be making these covers simple because I'm using it a lot. All right, so here we have our spine. I'm going to curve it a little bit more while it's still wet, and we will see if it works when it's dry. Okay, and the last piece. All right. So some more glue, and I think I'm going to wet my paintbrush slightly and remove the excess water out of it. Okay, so again, making sure I'm not putting too much glue, but also I'm making sure my borders, like the sides of the cover and the corners are covered well with the glue. Okay, and while this is going to be drying, after we are finished with the cover, we will be making some pages. Also, we're already almost half an hour into this video, so this is maybe not the the quickest process for making this, but this is what I do, so I want to share it with you exactly how I do it. So if this goes for too long, I am going to make 2 parts out of it, and the second part will be up probably a day after the first, so your covers will have time to dry, because usually what I do is I let my covers dry overnight, so I'm sure the glue is just perfectly dry by the time I do anything else with the cover, really. But I don't think I want to wait that long to finish it. I'm so excited about this project. I'm so excited about having another ephemera holder, and this fabric is just so beautiful. I really like it. Okay, so here it is. We can check now if our corners are actually glued, if the fabric isn't coming off anywhere, but it isn't. So now what we are going to do is we are going to be folding this fabric like this and gluing it. But first we are going to cut the corners of the fabric, because if we glued it like this, then we would have this awkward amount of fabric here, and it doesn't look nice, and it would be hard to glue down. So what we are going to do, let me bring it closer. Hopefully I can do it at this strange angle. But what we are going to do is we are going to cut the corner out, but leaving just a tiny piece of fabric here at the very corner, so that when we fold it, it will actually cover the whole corner. So let me show you what I'm talking about. I am cutting it like this and like this. So you see we have a tiny piece of fabric left, which is going to fold and cover our corner, and then we have this, which is not going to bulk up too much. And this is what I'm going to be doing with all four corners. And don't worry if you don't get it right the first time. It's definitely a trial and error, and you just have to see how much do you need to leave to actually cover your corners. Okay, and like that. Right. And also I am going to be putting metal corners on this because, like I said, this book is going to be used and reused a lot, so I want the corners to be secure, and the metal corners will actually cover any imperfections that you might have. And I get mine off on AliExpress, so if you go there and you look for metal book corners, you will find plenty in any design that you might like. Okay, so I'm starting with the longer edge, putting some of the glue here and just smooshing it with my paintbrush, just like that, making sure I have the edges covered, the corners covered well. Okay, making sure I don't have too little glue. This is a good moment to add some more if you need to. And then I'm starting with the spine, so I am just using my fingers to make sure I pull this fabric sort of up so that I don't have any wrinkles here. And then when I have my spine, I go to the side here and I'm pulling it up quite hard, because this is sort of what you can do to make sure you are not creating any wrinkles on the side. So doing it on the other side as well, just pulling hard like this. Oh, I have, see, I cut too little of this corner and it doesn't look great, so I'm just going to cut a little bit more here, just put tiny bit of glue here and glue it down. Okay, right. And I'm also just going like this, so I'm going with my fingers hard, kind of hard on the edge here, and I'm making sure everything is glued down properly. Okay, so we have one side, then I'm turning this around and I'm doing the other long edge. I always start with long edges for some reason. I think it's because they are more difficult, because they are longer obviously, and you have the spine, and so I'm just like, I want to get it over with, the hardest part first, so that's why I'm doing this. And then it's quite easy to glue down the shorter edges after you've done that. So again, starting with the spine here, making sure I have no wrinkles and pulling up and just kind of going over it with my finger and making sure I have it glued down like this, and then on the other side as well. Okay. Oh. Yep. Well, I don't know why I bother painting my nails when I know I'm going to be gluing stuff, because I get glue and paint and gesso all over my fingers and my nail polish when I'm creating my covers. So yeah, so I guess there's no need in painting them. But so we have our two covers. Now turning it to the side like this, and I'm going to be gluing this shorter edge. And here, just make sure you are taking extra caution with the corners. So you want to make sure your corners and also this piece of fabric that we had here, that we left while we were cutting, you want to make sure it's glued. It has glue over it too. So yeah, I'm not being too careful because we are going to be covering most of it with our end pages. And here what I'm doing, I'm starting with this corner. so the piece of fabric, I'm kind of, well, folding it so that it covers my corner, and only then I'm folding and pulling up the rest of the fabric. So let me just glue a fragment of it. And I go to about the half of the length, and I do the same with the other corner. So just folding it with my fingernail, pulling this bit up, and just pulling it, the whole thing up, and gluing it. But I hope my instruction is clear. I'm so sorry if it's not. I struggle to find the correct words when I'm explaining my process, but I really would like to share my process with you guys, so hopefully you can see what I'm doing, maybe better than you can understand what I'm saying. But like I said, if anything isn't clear, ask away in the comments, and I'll try to help you as best as I can. So again, gluing here like this, making sure my corners are covered with glue. And again, let me show you. So just folding this corner with my finger so that it covers the corner here, and then pulling this up and just kind of going over it with my fingers and gluing it down, going about to the half of the side here, and doing the same thing with this corners, folding it, bringing this piece up, gluing it down, going over with my fingers. You can go over with your bone folder as well. I just prefer to kind of do this part with my fingers, and again going on the side here, making sure everything is glued down properly. And yeah, so we have our cover, our base cover, almost done. Now look how gorgeous it looks. I love it, and it's so sweet with this tiny spine. I'm so used to huge spines by now, but I don't think I'm going to be needing a huge spine for this ephemera book. I just love how it turned out. And you see how it covers the whole spine area, but then it's not going too high, so it's not going to be visible under our end pages. That's perfect. Okay. And what I do now, before I glue it, I kind of hold it with my hand, and I go like this with my cover, so it creates those very light indents in the pages, in this cardstock, so it makes it kind of easier for me to place it when I have glue all over it. Hope it makes sense. Okay, so now gluing it down, and this time you really don't have to worry about how much glue you are putting. Just put enough so that it holds, because it's not going to slip through your fabric. Or maybe just make sure you don't put too much over the creases. The creases are actually going to touch the fabric that we have here, but for the rest of it, just make sure you're covering it well with the glue. Okay, now placing it really approximately in the middle. Don't have to be too fussy about it at all. And what I'm doing first is I'm just using my fingers or my bone folder to make sure it's stuck. I'm not closing my book yet. I won't be closing it for a few seconds until those sides are properly glued, because if I close it now, then they are going to start coming off because the glue isn't dry yet. And this glue is very nice because it dries fast, so I don't have to wait for too long. Okay, like this. So I think we are only actually going to make the cover in this episode, but yeah, but we will definitely have a second part to it very soon, and I will show you the pages, the pockets and everything. Okay, so Oh, sorry guys. I think I've waited long enough for this to dry. So now what I'm doing is I'm very carefully and very slowly pulling my cover up. I'm just checking if this card does not come off anywhere. I'm doing it gently, helping with my fingers here. Okay, like this, and so I can see it's glued properly. And what I'm most interested in is those sides here and here, because this here is going to be covered with our end papers, but we don't want it to come off on the top or the bottom. And doing the same with my other side, so being very gentle. I'm doing it slowly, taking my time. Okay, now I can pull this up and you can see it's glued perfectly. Nothing's coming off on the top or on the bottom, and if anything is coming off, then just give it a few more seconds, just push it with your fingers, or if it doesn't work, just use a little bit more glue under there. This is the moment when you can fix this mistake, and it's not going to be possible after we start gluing our end pages. Okay, so we have our base for the cover, and I think we are going to make and glue our end page, or do we want to? Let me think, because I want to have some sort of pockets on our end pages, but we are running kind of out of time. I mean, it's 44 minutes already. So, tell you what, guys, I will show you how I cut, how I measure, and how I make my end pages. And we are going to be sewing in pockets to our pages and sewing the pages in the book next time, so in the next part. So let me quickly show you what we are going to be doing here. We have a piece of paper that we want to create our end pages with. So we actually need 3 pieces, because we need 1 piece to cover our spine, and we need 2 pieces to cover our front and back covers from the inside. So I have this piece and it's double-sided, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to be using this side for my end pages and this side to cover up my spine, because the spine piece, it's not going to be so visible, so use the design that you like more, I would say, for the front. And also just having a double-sided cardstock for this purpose gives you the opportunity to actually use the whole piece, or use just 1 piece for all 3 pieces that we need here. So now I'm going to be measuring my cover, and so I go about maybe half a centimeter short. So this is it's not 15, it's shorter, so let me say this is going to be 14 centimeters. So I'm measuring, and I'm going to leave about half a centimeter or about 1/4 of an inch of space between my paper and my cover, from on this side and on this. So if you're, and let me check if this is going, how much this is going to be in inches, and I would say we want it like this, so about 5.5 inches. So you will have your end page, and then 1/4 of an inch on this side and 1/4 of an inch on this side. And then the same here, so about 1/4 inch less than your cover. So by 20 centimeters in my case, or about 7 3/4 inches. Again, I will have this for you in the description box. Sorry for my squeaky chair. And the piece that we want to put here in the cover area will be the same height, but let's say we will make it 4 inches or about 9 or 10, maybe 10 centimeters. Should be good. So I'm going to cut the height first. So we want 20 centimeters. I always keep like a piece of paper near me when I'm creating my cover, so I can refer back to the measurements anytime I need. So cutting these first, and we want 14 centimeters, or like I said, 5.5 inches, about this, and the same here. Okay, and we also want to make our spine out of this. Okay, so it's maybe, okay, so I wanted 10 centimeters about, okay, so will be good. And then let me take this side, and it's going to be the same height as our end pages, so 20 centimeters or 7 3/4 in my case. Okay, so let us see how this will actually look like when it's all glued down. And look how lovely. I love those soft muted colors. I love how it corresponds with those little bits of fabric peeking out of it. It's gorgeous, gorgeous. Okay guys, so this is, I think, it for the cover construction. So what we did today, let us sum this up. We have constructed a sturdy, well-made cover that you can use for your journals, for your ephemera holders, for basically anything, because it's well made. It's going to you know, endure a lot. So this is what we did, a hardcover fabric cover for our journal, and I'm going to finish here, and in the next episode we are going to be adding a book plate like this here. Oh my goodness, it's so heavy already. We will be adding a book plate on our cover, because this is the moment before you glue your end pages. This is the moment where you actually want your book plate to be put on your front cover. We are going to be making some pockets to put on our end pages, and going to be gluing our end pages onto the cover. And then I will show you how I make my pockets on my pages. I'm probably not going to take you through all the process, because it's very repetitive. So I think I will show you a few pocket ideas, how I make them, then I will make the rest off camera, so you don't, well, a lot of it is really just sewing on my sewing machine, so you wouldn't like to see it anyway. And the last thing that we are going to do is we are going to bind our pages into our cover using a 3-hole pamphlet stitch, which again is something that you will be able to use for your journals. So this is a sort of a universal tutorial. I am making an ephemera book, but remember, you can just use the same steps to make a sturdy, good quality journal cover, and to bind your signatures like that. Okay, so I really hope you find it helpful. I really hope it was easy to follow, that you learned something new maybe. If you have any questions, let me know, and look out for the second part of this video tomorrow, I think. Yeah, so take care, guys. Let me know in the comments what you thought about it, if you learned something new, and I will see you tomorrow in the second part of this video. Bye!